So 4 is quorum to start this?
4 out of 7.
Even though we may feel, yay, missing our compatriots.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. I'd like to announce this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can I have a roll call?
Yeah, Director Aguilar,
Here.
Topliff,
Here.
Freeman,
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
And then Brandon Deschler said they'll be absent, and Director Craig is going to be absent.
So they'll be late.
Late, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Perfect. All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders past, present, and future who call this place Anasqueo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship, support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now I'd like to move on to area 2, our consent agenda. Would any directors like to pull any items from the consent agenda?
I would just like to make a comment that I've had a discussion with Jonathan because I felt like the documentation on the parking study wasn't detailed enough, and especially since we're serving as a fiduciary for the university and the county, I just thought that we should see more detail there. And it also made me feel a little nervous that in the change order, the language was they may do this and they may do that, which I'm not so worried about because, you know, if they're billing by the hour and we're seeing their billing and, you know, we see the hours they put in, then that all feels good to me. So since Jonathan has reached out to them and they have agreed to give us more detailed invoices, including more detailed invoices for the 2 that have already been submitted. And so based on that, I am comfortable voting to affirm these invoices tonight.
Thank you. All right. Is that a motion?
You wish. Yes, it is.
Okay. Do I have a second on this motion?
I'll second.
Okay. The motion by Topliff and the second by Schultz. Is there any public comment on this motion? See no public comment. All directors in favor of approving this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. All right, the motion passes 4-0-0-3. Now I'd like to move on to area 3, our public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board of directors that are not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Do any members of the public wish to speak? Yes.
I have actually support a request than anything. So one of the ways that I keep track when meetings are happening is on Instagram. I get the notification, but the thing is, there's only one thing missing on date. You know, so if the notice about a meeting comes up, you know, I'm like, okay, what's the date? You know, and that's all I'm asking. Just put the date on there. You know, that little thing that pops up on there. Just, you know, throw a date on there. And we know it's every Tuesday or every second or fourth Tuesday of the month, but you know, it's the date would be nice. Just for personal record, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you for those comments. I'm sure we can make that amendment.
You have a hand up on Zoom.
Who has their hand? Ash. Okay. Yes, Ash, please speak.
Hi. I wanted to speak about the issue of cooling and warming centers and how I don't think there are enough in Santa Barbara. I think Isla Vista used to have some, like at churches that haven't been active in the past few years. And when there was really bad flooding, people were told that they could go to a place that was downtown, I think, but there wasn't anything local. And so I was wondering if maybe I know it's obviously it's not on the agenda right now, but just maybe going forward we could talk about potentially using the community center as a cooling and warming center. So yeah, I just wanted to advocate for that and maybe talk to you all in the future. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. Do any other members of the public wish to speak? All right, seeing no public comment, I'd like to move on to our next board section, discussion and action items. Item 4.1, the introduction of IVCSD's new community engagement project manager, James Picara.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jimmy or James, whatever you like to call me. Yeah, this is my second week here at the Ivy Community Service District. I went to Westmont here in town, graduated in 2020 with a degree in Spanish and history, and have a little bit of background doing community engagement with EF International School and with a program with Westmont. Locally, you'll find my free time surfing or skateboarding around town. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. It's good to already have seen you in the work in our parking update earlier last week. So I'm glad to have you on board. Do any directors have questions they'd like to ask right now for a new hire?
Oh, we're sorry that Sydney's gonna ditch you right away. So, good luck with that. We'll certainly try and give you all the support that you need to be successful in your job.
Thank you. Yeah, she's ramping me up quite quickly right now.
I'm sure she is.
All right. Well, seeing no board questions, is there any public comment on this item, introduction of our new hire?
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. We're excited to work with you.
Likewise.
Now I'd like to move on to item 4.2, the fiscal year 2023-24 budget.
Okay, well, I'll go through our budget letter, just to walk through the major points for the public understanding. And just to note, like it says, I know I've repeated this 100 times already, but we are approving the preliminary budget today, and we still have a final budget to approve in August. So these numbers might change, but it's mostly close to final. So revenues this year at IVCSD are 2.1 million, almost 2.2 million. That is a big change, big jump from previous years. The utility tax is estimated at 1.3 million, and that's a $182,000 jump from last year to this year. So, and you can see most of that increase came from electricity and gas. UCSB, we're planning to request from UCSB for next fiscal year $395,000 to clear out our fund balance at UCSB. They have a 7-year annual commitment of $200,000 to IVCSD. Next year is the last year. 23-24 is the last year of that, and we will need to renegotiate it. But the UCSB funds would be used for mainly one-time costs, but not all one-time costs. So it's for the Isla Vista Safety Stations program and interpersonal violence investigator, which is normally what we've done. But also for our public art fund, our move out fund, and community festivals is what we thought would be mutually agreeable projects that we could draw down the fund balance for. That are, the public art and move out, it's not staff costs. So it is something we can not 100% rely on that funding for. Same with the festival. So that's the UCSB funds. The goal is to draw down to zero. There's still about 5,000 left we need to find a purpose for. Parking study partnership funds, that's the funding from county and UCSB to fund our parking study. Plans for our festival, getting sponsorships at $10,000. We didn't meet it this year, but it's in the plans for next year. And then drawing down our fund balance, we have a pretty large, and we'll go over it in one of the next slides, is drawing down our fund balance to use for specific expenses. So it's mainly, it's actually all right now one-time expenses, which is what we're using our fund balance for. Our possible planning report, our parking study, the community garden, community center furniture, and IV beautiful equipment. So all of these are one-time costs. Grants, we're going to wrap up 20,000 from the STEP grant this year. And then charges for services, we have planned potential revenue from the compost collective sales and community center rentals. And the regular exchange agreement for management of this building with the county. That's the revenues. Does anybody have any questions on the revenues? All right. Now we bring a budget item every meeting from January to now, so I think we get all caught up. Operations, 700,000 is a pretty big area of spending, but operations includes community engagement, and I do plan to split them up for the final budget, so it's more clear what goes to what. But the main operations budget is here, $340,000 between my salary, Sibel's salary, our legal team, and our accountant. We have our community engagement budget, 265,000, and that's our 2 team members here as well as 1 intern, and all the different expenses we have for community engagement. Office budget's staying the same as usual. Administrative staying mostly the same. Insurance costs didn't go up as high as we thought this year. And then board, we do have in here capacity now and funding for 3 days of service per month. So board members who do a committee meeting will be eligible to request and get tracked to get 300 a month in stipends rather than 200. Community center, this is 286,000. That includes our program manager, Maya, and a new half-time project manager for scheduling, as well as the same budget for programming and interns as this year. Special project 0, Survivor Resource Center, same as usual, 3,000. Community garden gets a $15,000 bump for one-time costs to develop the garden at the community center, but the $30,000 ongoing costs are staying the same. The compost collective, it's showing the same budget right now, but we're wrapping up our work. We're with our ad hoc committee, and we have a consultant doing some work. So in August, we should be able to reflect the correct budget. Community festivals, we kept it at 110,000. Housing, rental mediation service, 21,000, same as before. The safety area, some big changes. So safety stations are at 95,000, anticipating a cost increase, but it might be higher than this. We don't know what the safety station cost is going to be right now. But that's for 3. And the interpersonal violence investigator is now in here and if it's funded today, UCPD is prepared to move ahead with the hiring process and have someone start in mid-July. So we'll have to just approve a contract at our next meeting. And parking, we have our parking study and our remaining funds for our STEP grant. So pretty straightforward there. And finally, last but not least, Ivy Beautiful, which is staying the same for its main budget, but we're adding two budgets that Ivy Beautiful will manage, which are public art, adding 10,000 to the usual 5,000, and then a $20,000 budget for move out, which we may need to reassess after all the activity we've done this year. But that's part of our final budget discussions. And then finally, this 88,000, which is for a community plan report, which we may do. That is our budget, and I can show you the fund balance projections. So we plan to end the year this year with 2 million in fund balance. 19,000 of that is for our rental mediation program. 1,030,000 is for our designated reserves, our committed reserves. So our capital, our maintenance, our strategic, and our self-insurance. And then we have near $3,000 short of $1 million for undesignated reserves, so 997,000, and 208,000 comes out of UCSB, and 1.2 million. Oh, plus that 200,000, it's 1.2 million in undesignated funds. But next year, if this budget is the budget we put in place, we'll end next year with $800,000 in undesignated fund balance and 13,000 at UCSB. So this is the 13,000 we still need to spend from our before we renegotiate our UCSB contribution. So it is a still healthy position, and we're using the one-time costs right now for our undesignated fund balance spending, mainly for the parking study and the planning report. That's it on my end for the budget.
All right, thank you very much. Do any directors have questions? Director Freeman.
What was the status with the domestic violence investigation contract with respect to overhead at the university?
I haven't heard about that. The 210,000 number is the all-inclusive number I've been given for that program. So I don't think that includes overhead. I haven't been told it does. And the contract, we're going off of the one we already had that expired when we couldn't fill the position last year. So it should be agreeable. I think it's just going through UC lawyers right now, but it's the same contract we've always had, so it should be smooth
Okay,
sailing.
and
Yeah.
that number is the all-inclusive number.
That's what I was
they're-
told.
they're
That's
told
what I
that
was
we-
told,
we're
yeah.
giving them that much money and they're giving us services.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
There was a conversation about increased overhead costs. Maybe that was associated with the CSO program?
CSO, safety
Okay.
stations, yeah.
You okay, Betty?
Do any other directors have questions they'd like to ask at this time? All right, I see no board questions, so I'll go to the public. Any members of the public have any questions or comments they'd like to make? All right, I see no public comments. Is there any board commentary on this item? Director Brain.
I just want to thank staff for all your work putting together this budget. I know that the way that we do our process is very extensive. We have a public survey that goes out where we collect people's feedback. We do that every year. And in addition to that, we have a variety of committee meetings where we go over this in a fine-tooth detail. So I just want to say thank you for all that, putting this together. I'm really excited with where this is at. And I think that we've been able to make some real good investments in programs this year. And we've taken some big steps to take some of the fund balance we had and really invest that in ongoing programming, which I think is really cool. So I'm excited for the direction that this is heading.
I wanted to ask a question kind of in this area. So there's on the summary, there's program 3004, program development. And I think I understand what that means, which is if we are to expand new services and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's what I want at this moment with our board, but I just want to make sure that that's what I'm understanding. Like, could you give an example of what that like kind of spending would be?
Yeah, this program is a leftover from the old days of when we didn't know, things were still preliminary and we didn't know necessarily which services we would even be able to bring online the next year. So we would put a lot of money into this thinking, okay, we can transfer it to another program once we actually do it. So it was just a catch-all area where we knew that we might be doing one of two programs. So let's just put the money away so that we have it, but we're not committing it to either one yet.
Got you.
So yeah, we haven't used it in 3, 4, 5 years.
That makes perfect sense to me. And then I wanted to, if you could give me a little bit of like a high level breakdown of the contractual services for the parking study at 6001.
Yeah, that's just the full cost of the, not the full cost, it's the 3/4 cost of the parking study. So the full
Gotcha.
cost is 240,000,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
spent 60,000 or so this year, 23,000 times 3. And that's what's the remaining for this year.
Got you. That makes sense. Okay, that covers all my questions. Do any other directors have questions or comments they'd like to make? Is there a motion that any directors would like to make?
I have to note the
Yes.
the parking study does not include the change order you're approved today. So that's the final budget will cover that.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
I didn't want to presuppose it. So.
Okay, I understand
But
that.
it's a one-time cost that we'll fund with one-time dollars. So it's zero essentially to the budget. So.
Perfect. That makes perfect sense to me.
I'd like to move approval of the preliminary budget.
Okay, that motion, is there a second for this motion?
Second.
All right, the motion by Topliff and the second by Director Deschler. Is there any public comment on this motion? All right, I see no public comment on this motion. All directors in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. All right, this motion passes 6-0-0-1. Now I'd like to move on to item 4.3, our fentanyl discussion.
Okay, so I included 2 attachments in here that our legal team had forwarded to us, which is just the standing order from the Department of Public Health of the state. And I also emailed you a legal memo of what is possible for IVCSD. So there's a lot to look into still, but I think what the board requests was to have a discussion just on the general topic and the different possibilities that we can do, that we can then more specifically look into those. So no direct action today, just looking for the ideas the board has so that we can look into making those possible and come back with a plan.
All right. Do any directors have questions at this time? Director Freeman.
In the email we received about this, there was a mention of the possibility of talking to our insurance carrier with relation to what they thought the potential liabilities and risks were with this and what coverage might be applicable. Has that happened yet? Or?
It hasn't happened yet, but I'll tell you that our insurance carrier is pretty broad in what they would cover us for. So most times when I've asked, will you cover, when we did the community festival, that was under our general insurance. So it should be okay, but I still need to get a yes.
One question I have, in some sense of, you might argue it's a very practical question. Are there people on our staff who feel comfortable doing this?
We haven't,
maybe including yourself.
Yeah, we haven't had that discussion as a staff in terms of, do you feel comfortable being the one administering and training for it? We haven't had that discussion. It's something we can discuss though at our retreat.
I could easily see a scenario where it turns out no one really is like, oh, I don't want to be the person to decide whether we're being, so we just want to check that.
Yeah.
Director Deschler.
So I just want to take a step back from this. I think there's value in us to bring an item up, to have a comprehensive discussion. And I don't know what it means to just say, we want to discuss fentanyl. I think if we're going to be bringing this up for the board, we should have analysis of, or a presentation, what's happening currently from UCSB, from the county, different resources. I just not sure where to take this conversation, because I think we need to identify the issue, what problem we're trying to solve. And I don't feel like we have the information to do that. And I don't think a conversation amongst board members when there's such glaring information not provided is very fruitful. I would really like to understand the landscape of the issue and if in fact there is a problem that we're trying to solve.
I think the board had requested this item, so we put it on the agenda, and the request was to see what the district can do to help distribute more naloxone. So we're just following the board direction here.
Okay. Director Brand.
Well, I can give a little bit of an idea of what I helped, because I was one of the people that requested that we have this item. What I think we're all aware that there was a very high profile death of an Iowa Vista resident recently related to fentanyl. That's not the first, and unfortunately will not be the last that this poisonous drug takes in our community. And I think that there is a role for us to play to help address what is really a public health crisis here. And I think that in line with a lot of our board's priorities of really approaching, creating a safer community through providing people with health resources, I think that this really fits into that. And I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with the Gauchos for Recovery and the UCSB Alcohol and Drug Program shortly after this tragedy occurred, where there was discussion about what property providers could do to help be a part of the solution. by obtaining Narcan from the UCSB alcohol and drug program and distributing it to residents, as well as how individual residents could obtain Narcan through UCSB alcohol and drug program, also through the county's behavioral wellness department. And one of the things that was very glaringly obvious and stated at that meeting is that when these organizations, whether it's the county Be Well or whether it's UCSB alcohol and drug program, apply using the standing order from the state, there's only so much supply of Narcan that they can get. And what we know is that sometimes the moment at which you need the Narcan the most, it may be too far away because there's just not enough of it distributed in the community, and there can be more awareness about how community members can access it. So I think that it's really exciting to hear that we, as an organization, could be an eligible organization to help apply for one of these standing orders, because it seems like we could really help increase the supply of this life-saving drug that's in the community. And so that, and along with the memo from legal counsel about how we could do this is definitely along the lines of something I'm very supportive of. I think it's good to investigate how would this practically work to make sure we're not duplicating efforts of another organization. But I think that, and how it would work practically with our staff too, I think would be of use as well. But I think it's very important. The vision that I have is the same way that we have been so successful with distributing information and collecting survey responses through tabling and canvassing, that we can do the same when it comes to distributing naloxone so that it is widespread in the community. Unfortunately, people may not even know that they need it until the moment when they need it. And so that's kind of my impetus for wanting to have this item on our agenda.
I had a question after looking at the types of organizations that are eligible. Do we know, Director Brandt just mentioned that UCSB, and then you mentioned a county organization that like both have this medicine. Do we know how many other orgs or how many other community organizations, like here mentions libraries, veteran organizations in our kind of surrounding bubble are distributing or have this tool?
I don't have that information right now. We can look into it. I know that the Foot Patrol and UCSB and IV at least have two.
Got you.
Active. So, I mean, is this something the board wants to do? Because it would take a lot of staff time, not a lot, but it would take staff time to come up with something for you all to consider doing. So I guess we're looking to see, is this an interest area or not? Like, we don't want to go down a rabbit hole if it's not something the board wants to do.
I think we need more information. I don't feel comfortable weighing in on this. I have no idea what this entails. I don't know how it's distributed. I don't know what qualifications are needed. I don't know what the need is. I don't know what the county and other organizations are doing. I mean, I definitely think we need more information. There's big gaps here. I think of course it's of value. We want to make sure that we're providing a resource if it's needed, but I feel like there's some community partners we need to engage to get more information to figure out what our role is.
Director Freeman.
I agree with Kirsten. And I don't know enough about this, and I don't really feel like I'm able to provide any kind of like firm direction even. But what I will say is that I think sometimes like I'll see a big problem where I need a bunch of information for something, and I try to break it down into some steps. It sounds like one of the steps here is the idea that, well, maybe we'd want to send staff off to do a presentation, but that it's itself a lot of time. Before I would send staff to do that, the two questions I'd asked earlier, one of which is kind of prompted by the discussion from presumably Ross, maybe it was Jamie, and I actually checked from on it, but the legal context, as well as the thought process I had is I'd be curious to know, and this sounds like it would require very little staff time. Can you check with insurance and see whether they say that this would be ridiculously risky thing for us to do with respect to any kind of rates we have on things, and is also check with staff, because if it turns out that we don't have anyone on staff that is excited to be the person who is around here ready to decide what to do with the Narcan and is excited to do the training, or we hear from the insurance people that, oh, this is actually going to be a ridiculously different kind of like in premium for whatever it is that we have, then there's kind of no point in going ahead with all of these other details that I agree with Kirsten, I would probably want to have in order to know whether I want to get it. And that just seems like a small amount of work for you to do. And you just agendize this again at the next meeting when we hear back on those things.
Just those two things and then.
But that's for me. I don't know if anyone else wants to add something.
Yeah, I would say, I would invite Gauchos for Recovery. I would invite the county program to hear from them, what their program is, what their reach is, what challenges they have. Because if we can help as an entity to get more naloxone to these entities that are already doing the work, that may be the role that we fill. But I think we need to know what's out there before we say we want to find out what we can do.
Does it sound like it would take much work to ask them to show up to our meeting?
No,
and give some
no,
presentation?
no,
Oh, I
of
just want
course
to check
not.
on that. I don't
No,
want to
no,
like
no.
push a bunch of work at you. Like,
No, like a research report, that
Okay,
would
yeah.
be work, but inviting people to come
Great.
present, of course,
Okay.
that's easy.
Then we can query them.
Yeah. Externalize.
I'll just say for what it's worth, I've spoken with Jackie Curd at UCSB Alcohol and Drug Program. I know she'd be very interested. She's on vacation right now, but
Okay.
would be very interested in joining a meeting like that. So I think that's a great action.
All right, is there any other board questions or clarifications you want to ask?
So it says in the email that we're not really allowed to contract with the UCSB group for them to purchase and distribute it if they don't have a standing order. If we don't have staff members who, I guess this is like a question to be brought up at a later time, but if we don't have staff members that want to do it, is there a way if another group has a standing order to transfer the drug that we get under our standing order? So another org has more of the drug to distribute with qualified professionals?
It's a good question.
Maybe Jamie can answer that. She's on the Zoom.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm here. So unfortunately, the standing orders are not transferable. Narcan or naloxone is a controlled substance. So whoever is responsible for obtaining the standing order is responsible for making sure that they are cataloging all of the doses that they have, who they're training to distribute it, and also keeping track of those records and also reporting them to the state each year. And so it is very organization specific. It cannot be something where we just, hand out free doses of naloxone or even contract with UCSB to do them. If UCSB wants their employees to do that, they would have to have a separate standing order, and IVCSD would have to have its own separate standing order. So they are not transferable, unfortunately.
So I verify, I understand the last bit you said. If we both have our own separate standing order, we still can't transfer just the naloxone itself between the two people who each have their own separate standing order?
No, unfortunately not, because they are counting the doses that they're giving. And they keep very tight records. From my understanding of the process of the standing order, they do keep records of how many doses. And it's based a little bit on need, on the reporting requirements. And so, for example, one organization might only get 50 doses a year or for 6 months or however long it's good for, whereas another organization, probably like UCSB, who has a higher likelihood of overdoses and has a higher reported use of naloxone, might get much more supply. And so I think that's how they're kind of figuring out how to allocate those doses as well, because each entity that has a standing order, they receive them for free.
Dr. Brand.
I would just add that precisely what you just stated, sir, about the fact that there is a limited supply is also precisely the reason why I think we should be looking at this. Because as another organization, we have the ability to help increase the supply, and it's my understanding that supply is a limit on how effective our partners are able to be in terms of distributing this into the community. Additionally, these doses expire. So they're not good forever once they get out into the community. There's a shelf life. And so there's the need for continuous distribution.
Schultz.
Before we come back to this, can we, like, when we come back to it, see if there's a staff interest in anybody actually wanting to administer those doses and anyone that would be comfortable doing the training?
Yeah, we'll do that, the insurance and the 2 presenters.
And I will say, I remember at the previous second meeting last month, there was a discussion about injecting doses of Narcan versus the like oral or nasal kind. And I believe that the standing order that this naloxone covers is nasal based, nasal applied. But I could follow up on that to be sure.
Dr. Destro.
As you consider this and bring it back before the board, I think there'd be a real value for you to do not an exhaustive report, but really give an assessment of what it's going to take operationally for IVCSD to do this program. Because hearing about that the standing orders aren't transferable, I understand why the IVCSD would want to be involved in this from that perspective, just to increase the supply. But you mentioned it is, what is the staff commitment and the operational time that it's going to take? Because it's not enough to ask if a staff member is interested, because it's an organizational priority. If it's an organizational priority, then it's not one person that's going to bear the work. And given that it's a controlled substance, there's a lot of requirements, I'm sure, that need to be documented and handling and a lot of different stuff. So I think from an organizational standpoint, it'd be helpful to have your perspective on what the timing and operation is.
It would depend on what exactly the proposal or the program's going to be. I mean, it could be a passive thing that we only have a couple at the community center that we hand out at a small rate. It could be really expansive. So also, I don't know what exactly we want to do for me to discuss what it would take. So I think it's also a chicken and eggs kind of situation. But that's one thing I'm thinking about.
Well,
is
if the
how
board is,
expansive
yeah, but
we
if the
wanna
board
be.
is saying, if the board says, listen, this is a problem, there
Yeah.
aren't enough supply, then obviously we want supply.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you need to analyze that, I mean, it seems like operationally to do 10 is not going to be too dissimilar to a lot. If in fact, but I don't know. I think that's what you need to,
Okay.
you need to analyze. You need to
Okay.
give us that information.
Okay. I'll look
Because we
into
put
that.
a lot of burden on you all, and we've gone through every meeting. We have a new thing for you all to do. And so I think it's important you give us an assessment
Okay.
of what you can do realistically.
All right, thank you for those questions, directors. I want to open this item up to the public. If there's any public commentary on this item. Yes.
Fentanyl's ugly, but there's an uglier drug on the way that Narcan does not work on. With that said, what Jamie was talking about, the different types of administration. There's oral, there's intravenous, and there's nasal. Nasal is the least effective, and with that said, Narcan is not always going to work effectively on an overdose victim of fentanyl. There's a reality. There's a couple realities about fentanyl use in Isla Vista. There's 2 approaches. There's proactive and reactive. Narcan is a reactive approach, which leads to a little mindset that I'm aware of. So I was told a story by a good friend of mine recently that his friends, they had some MDMA, which is a great party drug for raves and things like that. It's a sort of a knockoff of an methamphetamine type of molecule. And their friends went out to a music festival out in Coachella. Well, they had fentanyl test strips, and they tested their MDMA, and it tested positive for fentanyl. So they did it anyway. And guess what? Every one of those people needed Narcan, and a couple almost died. So it's a mentality that you're dealing with. Maybe a proactive approach would be to kind of thwart that mentality somehow. I don't know how you're going to do it. People sometimes think they're invincible. I know I still do stupid human tricks on skateboards and BMX bikes. I'm 63 years old. But the thing is that there is mentalities involved with fentanyl. People will test for the drug, and their little drugs that they get and test positive, they'll do it anyway. So that's something to consider. It comes down, it's not a demand and supply problem, it's a supply and demand. You're having trouble getting supplies of Narcan. And then there's a shelf life issue. Actually, outdated Narcan is more dangerous than fentanyl itself. First of all, it doesn't work, and secondly, it causes some sort of adverse reaction in the body. So like I said, it's a demand and supply. You have a demand for this wonder drug of sorts, but there's a limited supply. And unfortunately, the reason there's a demand for it is because of the mentality involved with, people testing for the fentanyl and their drugs and testing positive and doing it anyway. So that's a big issue. And again, I have to emphasize that there is a new drug on the streets right now. I can't remember the name of it. I know the molecule, benzene ring for benzene ring, but I can't remember the name of it. And it is more powerful than fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin. 2 grains will knock you out. This one's even worse. So that's in the pipeline. I don't know how available this new drug is. I haven't looked into the availability of it on the street, but fentanyl's bad enough as it is. And, I think a lot of it is just dealing with the attitudes of people of wanting to put something in their system that is contaminated with fentanyl. So I don't know. It's like I said, it's proactive and reactive approaches to it. And I think that the proactive is to get a lot of education to people and say, this is not what if the stuff tests positive, there's no way you're going to dilute it. You're not going to cut it. How do you know qualitatively what you have in there, but you don't have a quantitative analysis of it. You don't know how much is in there. Is it 2 grains? Is it 10 grains? Is it 20 grains? So you have a very serious problem with people testing these other substances that they're going to intake by whatever means possible, test positive for fentanyl, and they're going to do it anyway. So that's, I think, the biggest issue right now. And as far as getting, naloxone, Narcan, getting it more available, it's a good step. It's a good direction to go into, but there are certain realities to it that have to be kind of accepted. And behaviors is one of those realities, I hate to say. And another thing I got to point out, most of the ODs in Isla Vista that have occurred are fentanyl. It's not heroin. It's not. I remember the one time there was oxycodone was the big, OxyContin was the big draw at one time, a mixture of OxyContin and alcohol. But now any OD that occurs in Isla Vista is fentanyl based, and a lot of it is because somebody thought they were getting one product and it was contaminated with fentanyl. So that's a big issue. That's just my take on it. I could go on and on about this, but that's just my preliminary take on this. I don't know what to say. It's just what I said. And if I find out that new drug, I'll definitely pass on that information too. Whatever treatment methods there are for this. So if I find out anything, I'll let you all know.
Well, I just wanted to stay in the public comment for a moment. Is there any other members of the public who wish to speak?
Nitazine?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Soria, for those comments. Director Brandt.
I was just going to say, it is already here in our community in things that are laced with fentanyl and with that as well.
I wanted to point folks to a part of our agendized link. There's the FAQ about the California Department of Public Health regarding the naloxone standing order, and there's a short paragraph about naloxone, and even that is pretty informative. We hear about the intranasal spray, intramuscular, and subcutaneous. And so intramuscular and subcutaneous, those are things very similar to what folks are given with an EpiPen. I have an EpiPen. I'm allergic to peanuts. Anyone who's been around with children or adults with different types of food allergies or other kinds of allergies, it's a very common thing. And there was at one point when that was a huge struggle due to cost, and this kind of person, I can't remember the bad name they had for this person, who basically owned the patent and made it very expensive to get this really simple thing. But the delivery of the drug to save someone's life was not something that we viewed as very invasive or scary. And I think because this revolves around opioid use, then it gets this much scarier issue. But the act of saving someone's life is just as easy as saving someone's life when they're having an allergic reaction to a food item. And so I want the community to be aware that like the action you take to save someone's life could be that easy. And so I'm very much in support of us like continuing down this path to learn more about naloxone. It's something that we need in our community desperately. If you follow the link that says learn more about naloxone, it takes you to a much longer bulleted list from the California Department of Public Health. And on that page, there's an area about expired naloxone. And so they wrote, expired naloxone is better than no naloxone. If you have expired or soon to be expired intranasal Narcan or injectable intramuscular naloxone that is improperly stored, contact local syringe services program about donating the naloxone. If you have a large amount, 10 plus doses, you can contact Next Distro about donating the naloxone. Now, hear about the shelf life extension. The FDA has approved extended shelf life for the nasal spray formulation of naloxone from 2 years, 24 months to 3 years, 36 months. That's a pretty good chunk of time that if we have this resource, or not us, but our partners in the community have this resource that we can help our neighbors. So I guess my comments are that it is uncomfortable right now to think about intervening in someone who's having an overdose, but the steps are not that similar from things that we consider normal in our everyday life. Things that happen on airplanes, things that happen in all kinds of schools, different age groups. So I think it's something that we should not have too much discomfort around. I understand the discomfort, but it's something that we need to be proactive about. I understand that we might not want this under the purview of our district's staff responsibility. I can totally understand not wanting to be the person to give that if I was unfamiliar. But I do see in that list of possible organizations, I see libraries, and it makes me think about our partnership with the city of Goleta around libraries and some of their interest into looking into expanding their bookman services to go into other parts of their community. And some of these other parts of Goleta's community could benefit from having this resource as well. So it makes me think that there are partnerships that we can have with other local orgs that we can have a stronger amount of support for the community and not just only us siloed resources that clearly there's good reasons why we can't share these resources, but if we have better partnerships, then we can help save more lives. Are there any other board comments or responses or questions?
Do we want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would hear a motion.
I guess I would direct staff to set a hearing and invite partners to participate so we can learn more and look into the items listed by Director Freeman and Director Deschler, which regard insurance and
Operational time.
operational capacity.
So I would say at this point, I don't think that a motion is necessary. I think if the board would like, they can just give direction to staff, and as long as we have consensus, Jonathan can bring something back. I don't think there is an affirmative item for the board to be voting on at this point.
Good to me.
I'd like to add that interest and direction to see what's happening with our neighbors in Goleta and see what the city is doing and which of their different orgs may or may not be participating in this standing order.
That's good.
All right. See no other comments. Move on to item 4.4. the downtown Isla Vista trash cans.
Okay, well, we have some good news on this that contradicts my earlier email, so no bad news today. So we've been talking with the board. I mean, the board's been really interested for many, many years now about the trash can situation in downtown IV. When Jenna started, she started tracking the trash cans. You know, we got an additional day, we got the days changed, so it's not, 2 weekend days, it's getting collected in a row. But there's been a growing problem, like the trash cans are breaking, many of them are out of service right now. And so there's a deficit in like even the basic capacity, not even, what the real capacity is, but the usual capacity is now in a deficit. So we've been talking with the county about getting replacement trash cans that are bigger and that have signage slots in them so that we can use for getting information out. And County Public Works is all in. They approved funding half of them and they will handle purchasing and installation this summer. So we just need to approve our half and we can move forward, and then we'll have a separate project to figure out the art and signage that'll go in them. But we don't have to figure that out right away. We can slot that in after, or put a wrap. So yeah, it's a $11,700 that we could allocate, and it wouldn't get additional trash cans. It would just replace all the ones we have now, which are 15 years old. So that is and the reason we're bringing it so fast, and I put it in the report, is because of there's so many missing right now that instead of doing 2 projects of replacing the missing ones and then doing the rest, it just seemed faster for both of us and the county to do them all at once. So.
Yeah. All right, is there any board question on this item, Director Friedman?
I think I do understand, but I do want to clarify because I feel that there was like a accidental contradiction. We are getting new ones to replace the missing ones. Like
all of them will be replaced.
But the ones that are missing, we're getting like it's not just the ones that are there right now will be new. And there will be some more that are not there right now.
Yeah.
Because they're missing. Okay.
Same number as before.
Same numbers as original.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and Jenna's on the call. She can share any additional details on that. But yeah, we're gonna give them the same locations. They did ask us, tell us the locations you want. For the most part, the locations are fine. I mean, there are more places we need trash cans, but these are, we at least need to keep the same locations because those are all key spots near restaurants. But on this side of the loop, for example, they're not this far up. They're mainly on the Perdal area.
I was just confused. Wanted to verify. You said that we're not getting any new ones that we have currently.
Not additional. Yeah, not above.
Yeah. And then it would have been really exciting to see what these new trash cans look like. Have like the photo from the catalog. But
I don't have. I can pull up a picture right now.
I can, if I share my screen, I have the website pulled up, or Jonathan, I can email you the link really quick.
Go ahead, Jen. You can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. So it's these. And it's possible to get a wrap on them like we talked about originally, but we're going to get them without the art first, just so that we have them since the current ones are not working.
Are these the same size as the ones we have now?
They're bigger.
They're bigger.
They're just a little bit bigger. The ones we have now, I believe, are 32, and this is the 35 gallon. And due to the location, 35 is as big as we can go.
Like what Marburg will be willing to service. Because we looked at even bigger. We looked at the big bellies, but Marburg can't service those.
Director Topla.
Jonathan, you said that we had other locations where we could use them, but they weren't the original locations.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we have been, hitting the wall with our trash problem. Why aren't we putting in more trash cans?
Yeah, I think when our conversations with the county, it's been very positive on going further. I think we're just going to say, let's do a phased approach. Let's replace all the current ones and then move on to adding new locations. So this is just to at least get the current ones upgraded, but it is in the discussions to go to add more.
It seems like that would be
Yeah.
well advised.
Yeah, no, it's part of our discussions. I think we just wanted to act to get this done and the county's
Sure.
approved this, and then we can move on to the next one.
Director Schultz.
Clarifying question. It's also the bins that are also designated as recycling too, right? It's both of them, like the ones that are both next to each other?
Yeah, and Jenna can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're gonna do is they're gonna be mixed because the county sorts it anyways. And so what we're seeing happening now is the trash will fill and then the recycling will be empty. So we have like unused capacity right now. So it is sorted later anyways. So but that's what we're talking with Public Works about.
If it is mixed, does that mean we're doubling the capacity?
Yes.
Yeah, so right now, one says trash and one says recycling, even though they both go to the same place and get sorted later. So with these, hopefully we can, and I'm sure we can, get some kind of signage that says all things thrown in this trash, whether or not they're recyclable, will be sorted out. That way people are going to use both of the trash bins for trash and not just one.
I just wanted to clarify, so on the item, the language underneath says 11,367.84, and then on the attachments, it has 11,700.
Just an increase, I did the math wrong on the agenda. It's 11,700.
Perfect, okay. Director Brandt.
Just want to say a big shout out to Jenna for making this happen. I'm so excited about this. I know everyone who lives in the downtown area is going to be really excited about this, especially our local businesses. And I think the wrap is really cool. It's a great opportunity, I think, to advertise the compost collective, another way that people can help cut down on emissions from waste.
All right, I'll move to the public. Is there any public comment on this item?
Ash.
Oh, Ash, yeah.
Yes, Ash, please.
Hello. I am happy to hear about getting, trash cans that are replaced and a little bigger and stuff. I'm a little worried about how it will affect people who collect cans and bottles for the money for recycling, because I think how it currently is, like, there's probably some people just throw them in with the restaurant trash, but probably maybe more people put them in the recycle, and so people don't have to sort through as much of that. And I'm wondering if it's possible to put something like a smaller bin on the side or the top where the cans and bottles can go, so that people don't have to always have to go through as much stuff to get to it. Check.
Can I respond?
I don't think that's a feature. Yeah, I just don't think that's a feature in these, but you can respond, Jenna.
I do believe that it would be possible to get a little attachment on the side where you can put cans. I don't know how much extra that costs, so if that's something that you all feel is important, I can get a quote for that.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I think that conversation with Jay, I think that a kid at the bike shop is going to be very happy. He doesn't have to empty out the garbage can. Little inside joke here. I think it came up in one of the meetings. I think it's a great idea to have, have the right amount of garbage cans and replace the ones that you mentioned are missing. I think it's a great thing. In terms of the recyclables, I think that maybe some of the wording on it might be sortable trash, not, Ash brings up a great point. People that are collecting cans and bottles, but they're very selective. They go for, of course, the aluminum cans. It's priority number one. Then there's the plastic bottles, but not a lot of glass bottles because it's a lot of weight to lug around from IV to the recycle center out in Goleta. So they don't really go by, they don't take the glass bottles. At our apartment, we sort out the plastic bottles and cans separately from the regular recycle, if you want to call it that, like cardboard, things like that. You know, I don't know if putting that side bin will be helpful or hurtful. I really can't say one way or the other. I could say that it's a lean towards positive. But the thing is, you have to specify on it plastic bottles and aluminum cans only, because if you put glass in there, it's just gonna go to waste in there. So, and also the thing is to try to keep Marburg from having to service that recycle container. So you'd have to have very specific signage on that, in terms of both sortable waste and the recyclable stuff. Recycle should just be limited to the plastic bottles and aluminum cans. That's what they're mostly after. If you did that, that bin would be empty every day. I promise you that. We have one gentleman that comes by every morning, and we've got a couple of them, and they go through all our recycle bins, and then they spot the one where we have on the side. Oh, there's everything there. So it's there's gonna have to be definite signage on that, specifying that aluminum cans and plastic bottles only. And if you did that, Marburg wouldn't even have to touch that extra receptacle. They wouldn't even have to look at it. So that's something to consider on this. But as far as the extra cans go, the kid's gonna be very happy there over at the bike shop and the bike boutique. So.
All right, thank you for those comments. It's a very interesting item to consider adding on. Yeah, do any directors have comments they'd like to make? Director Brandt.
I'm just saying, I don't have that much information about how practical the idea is, but it sounds intriguing. And my personal opinion is for staff not to let the budget hold you back, because I'm sure any increase in dollars to make that happen would probably be a budget dust for us. So I don't think that should be a restriction. I think it's an intriguing idea, and I appreciate the commenter for bringing it up.
We'll check.
Well, I just want to say another thank you to our staff, specifically Jenna, for continuing to have excellent conversations with our partners in the community on how to bring Isla Vista into a more clean and waste-free environment, waste-free community. Every couple of meetings, we make a serious step forward, and I'm really proud of that. Even just the increasing of the gallons from 32 to 35, increasing the capacity to have more than just lost space in a broken bin is a huge upgrade for our community. So I'm really happy to hear about this.
I have a comment.
Yes.
In regards to the extra space for cans and plastic bottles, I would just defer to the staff on their expertise in terms of the mixed signals, mixed messaging, perhaps of having a sortable, something that you can put both things in and then have something separate. And I could see that being confusing, but I also understand that there's a desire to separate that for people who collect this for money. And then related to trash, I just wanted to say, because Jen, I know, was very involved in this, it was amazing to see some of the cleanup that happened over the weekend. I don't know if we're going to have a recap on, we will. Okay. Unbelievable amounts of trash were picked up, and it was really good social media on efforts, and a lot of things happen on private property that IVCSD was paying for. So I hope our property providers see that.
Is there any other board comment? We'll hear a motion if there is one.
I'd like to move that we approve the funding for the trash cans, and if there's an opportunity to also have a little sidecar for the cans and bottles, that we make that funding available as well.
All right, motion by Topliff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Scholes. Is there any public comment on this motion? All right, I see no public comment on this motion. All directors who are in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. This motion passes 6-0-0-1. Now I'd like to move to item 4.5, the Ivy Food Co-op mural.
Okay, well, there's another one that Jenna's working on today. So a couple meetings ago, the board approved a public art policy as a process for organizations to apply for funding for public art displays from us. We got an application from Ivy Food Co-op, and we had $5,000 already in our budget this year. Their request was for $6,800, or not request for $6,800, their total budget is $6,800 to do the project. And so we're recommending approval of half the cost so that we'd go 50-50 with them on it. It's 2 murals, one in the front, one on the side, and it would be, their name with fruits and vegetables, similar to what they have now, just an upgrade and a refresh. And so we looked at it, we looked at our policy, scored it under that. There's not really a scoring, it complies with the policy. It does, and so we're recommending it for approval. And so, like I said, we have 5,000 in our budget for this, and this is 3,400. So it just comes right under, and we'll produce 2 murals for the community.
All right, thank you for that update. Do any directors have questions? Director Freeman.
I feel like I'm so confused. So did they remodel the building and add something to it that this is on?
No,
I'm staring at Google Maps and I found the corner of the building that I'm pretty certain this is at, which is facing the IVRPD.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of them.
And I'm looking on Google Maps and the thing that's circled like to verify the image, the JPEG file that has a red circle on it is where the mural's going. That doesn't exist.
Oh, that's new.
That is new. They did. Okay, they did. That's why I was like, did they remodel the building? Okay.
Yes, it's there. It's this location, and then in the front here.
You're not going crazy.
So is this mural facing the IVRPD like back lot basically?
Yeah,
Okay.
one of them.
Got you. But it is high, it is high enough to be visible from the street.
Yeah,
really.
it's public. Yeah, public.
Yeah, even in the Google Maps image, which has a lot of stuff in front of it that is not in the JPEG file, you can see the location where this mural is going, but it's not that wall just happens to not be here. But when that wall is so high, you would see it over all of that stuff. I guess I do have, despite the fact that I was one of the people who was on the committee that made this policy, now actually seeing the first actual thing occur with it, it feels a little awkward because it just feels like we're paying for part of somebody's sign because it's even going to have their name on it. Like I guess I just didn't really anticipate this would ever get used to like make something that was like an identifiable landmark thing as opposed to like, oh, you're gonna put a giant octopus on a wall and it's gonna be like, like that. I was really into that idea. This is making me feel icky somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, the board can definitely say that this is not in line with what we want to fund and not fund it for sure, or say we want to fund something else, not like a sign for the business. So yeah, it is definitely fair to not fund it. We thought it did meet the priorities or the outlined, criteria, but it's the board's prerogative to say no.
You have a question or comment?
Comment.
Okay, I'll wait for the comments for a little bit later. Is there any questions at this time?
Okay, it's a question.
It's a question, okay.
Yeah, so
Please,
I want to ask the attorney, is this considered a gift of public funds if in fact we are providing funding for private business signage?
So the gift of public funds rules is a very interesting concept. It requires the board to essentially make a finding, and this would be consistent with the public art policy, that the funds are being utilized for a public purpose and that the benefit to the business, in this case, the Ivy Food Co-op, would be receiving an incidental benefit. The purpose of the public art policy and the funding is for the public to be able to enjoy art in public places. And so that really would be the public benefit and it would serve a valid public purpose. That's the quote unquote phrase that you're supposed to use, valid public purpose. And generally speaking, once the board makes that finding, if this were to be, let's say, challenged in court, once they make that finding, the courts don't really disturb what constitutes a valid public purpose. They leave that to the discretion of the policymakers and the decision makers. So they don't really get into the merits of it as long as there is a finding that it serves a valid public purpose.
Can you
Yeah,
zoom in
wait,
on the
can
word
I-
incidental?
Well, wait a second.
I'm sorry.
So the thing is that I understand a mural on a building is a public purpose. What I'm asking is if it says Isla Vista Food Co-op, which is promoting their business, that's what I'm focused on. Because that's not the public art, the public service benefit. Goes above and beyond that, in my mind.
Non-incidental.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's an argument that could be made. Ultimately, it is the board's, like Jonathan said, it's the board's discretion on whether or not this proposed art conforms to the policy. You know, and also too, the board can also modify and provide direction, say we will approve the funding if you take out, you know, X, Y, and Z parts of the public art that we don't think, you know, the board's policy or supports, you know, the objectives of the public art. So we're not going to fund those aspects of it. And so really it's at your discretion.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for
You're welcome.
explaining that. Is there any other board questions at this time? I would like to go to the public. Is there any public comment on this item? Yes.
Yeah, community art's a wonderful thing. If it becomes an advertisement, then it's a different realm altogether. So you have to consider, as Directors Freeman and Drexler brought up, you have to consider that aspect. Is it a promotional for a business? With that said, you know, if there was a partnership between IVCSD and IV Food Co-op, that might be a sort of it's kind of a gray area. I don't know how you could do that, but I personally believe that public art is a very necessary thing, or a good thing to have in the community. But there are, you know, there's that achy feeling that Director Freeman brought up about, oh, you're doing this with a business. So, you know, Kim and I support the food co-op, you know, but if it's an advertisement that's no longer public art, it's an ad. So you have to kind of consider that, take that into consideration. This is my 2 cents.
Thank you for those comments. Is there any other public comment at this time? All right, I see no. Yes, please. Yes.
So one thing I do want to mention is particularly, so this is regarding 2 separate murals, the one that faces the IVRPD parking lot and then the other one that is just like faces the co-op parking lot. The one that's higher up facing IVRPD, that one they definitely, I'm sure, will want to say Isla Vista Food Co-op, because the whole point is that you can see it without even having to drive onto the actual street. You know that the co-op's there. But I don't know in terms of the other mural they want to create that's to the right of the front entrance. That one, I don't know that it currently even says Isla Vista Food Co-op. And I don't think it would be as important to them to have it say that in that location. So, and we're only discussing funding half. So essentially we're only in the end funding one of the 2 murals. So I can get back to you about what they want the mural to look like to the right of the door and whether or not that would be more promotional.
All right, thank you for that clarifications. Yeah, I wanted to comment. I feel a real similar ickiness that was shared earlier. In the 3rd attachment, there's a screenshot of the receipt from the artists, and I'm familiar with the artists, and they do great work. But the second and the third line item are for a t-shirt and a tote bag, I assume. And I'm imagining those things being sold at the co-op. And when I think about art that we fund and then it gets sold, even for a community-owned organization, that doesn't feel like public art. Eventually, the dollars are going in the co-op's pocket, which I guess is the community's pocket. It's very gray to me, and so I don't feel a strong support for the totality of the way this item is written. As a director, I would like to see a little bit more boundaries on what we are supporting or what we are sharing funds for.
Just real quick, we're not paying for the t-shirts or tote at all. Like that's totally separate from our thing.
Gotcha.
It might be the same design, I don't know.
Yes, Director Brandt.
I was just gonna bring up a proposed compromise because I don't feel the same feeling that has been expressed. I think this is all of the most of the signage in Isla Vista that businesses have was paid for by the government through the IVRDA facade improvement program. And we've had this policy in place for the purpose of providing more cultural and artistic value to the community. So I'm not like as inclined to it's not the first thing that I thought of. But I hear what people are saying, and so my proposed compromise would be that everything that that says the words Ivy Food Co-op or has their brand be produced in an artistic manner, so that it's not just the name itself, but that there are other artistic elements that go along with it, so that it very objectively has artistic value and not just brand value.
Do we have the policy, the IB policy? It would be helpful to know what the IVCSD policy is on public art.
Yeah, we approved it a month ago at our meeting. I can attach it for you.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. I don't remember things a month ago. I'm sorry, but my life is full. My brain is fuller.
What part of the policy do you want to see?
I just want to see the whole dang policy.
It's pretty long.
That's okay.
It's
This is an
remarkably
important
long.
issue.
So this is the purpose and intent of the policy.
That's it.
No, that's just the introductory
Purpose and
paragraph.
intent.
Oh,
And
it's
there's
so
a
long.
bunch of
It's got a bunch of definitions. We quibbled about some of these for a
Definition of
while.
Public
Came
art.
back.
And I just want to point out that long before we had this policy, we've had this as a budget line item, going back to 2017. We've allocated this money, but it's never been used.
Yeah,
It's
but
the
there's
first
value
person-
for the directors to see the policy prior to authorizing
I know.
funding to support the policy.
I totally agree. I'm just putting it out there.
And here's the process. So they apply with these things. And
Do we have that sketch, by the way? Like, I'm still confused as to what it is actually going to look like.
Jenna, do we have the sketch to attach?
They were working on getting it to us, and I believe that it's ready, but the artist needs to send it over.
Well, and we don't even have a completed application according to the
We've
policy.
looked at it, we've had a hand-drawn sketch, but not a graphic design sketch. That would be something we can attach. We've seen it on,
Even a hand-drawn, but with the board that's approving this doesn't have the hand-drawn.
yeah, I didn't attach the hand-drawn sketch. But it just says their name and fruits and vegetables like I described.
Does
Do you-
it say anything in the policy specifically about naming or advertising, like pro or against?
I don't know.
I mean,
Sorry, is that something we should or can shift at a later date?
We can always change the policy. And
We
that's,
should
and
change it.
I want to underscore, as one people on policy committee that brought this, to the board, I want to say that, this is our first real test of it. And if it's making us feel uncomfortable, we should edit the policy. If we actually like the policy, the process.
Yeah, as one of the directors on the policy committee and part of this conversation, we definitely got in the weeds, and I definitely did not even consider this type of question and what it would feel like for other directors and what it would feel like for future directors. So yeah, that's my hesitation as a director about this as currently stands. Yeah, Director
Is
Schultz.
there precedent for this? Like, has anything like this come up before? Have we given money to a business to let them do this before? Like, is that something that's happened yet?
We haven't, but the redevelopment agency did do that at one point. So not us, but someone else did in Ivy.
I struggle with this because on one hand, the co-op is just an institution in this community, it's a landmark, right? And it is publicly owned and it's so integral to the community. And so I definitely see the value of it having a beautiful mural that is, that makes sense to me. I really struggle with them putting their name on it. And I think, who's next? What other business is going to come to us and ask for a mural that is cannabis or hamburgers as part of their mural? And I mean, because that's the extreme that we're taking. I mean, it's fruits and vegetables now for the IB co-op, but what's next? And so I think that it's really difficult to legislate what is art, right? I mean, there's Supreme Court cases all about this. So I don't want to legislate art, but on the other hand, I don't think it's appropriate that the name of the institution be as part of what we pay, what a governmental body pays for.
Dr. Freeman.
Another like perspective I want to add on this is, so I spent a lot of time working with King Yasuda as a co-facilitator of IB Open Lab. And one of the things that they did a lot was to go around and do murals. Sometimes there was like a related class that was like worked with housing services to put murals on buildings, but a lot of what Kim's class did was to go on like businesses and try to improve them. And there was, to me, like it felt different than this. Like there's a mural that's on, I think it's Haunted Kitchen, or it's the one right next to Haunted Kitchen, that is, no, actually, it's on Sam's to Go. There's a mural on Sam's to Go that is a like sporting events and everything. And it's like, well, it's not like, even because you made me think of this when when she was saying about the like, even if it's just hamburgers or something, it's like that. What you could imagine that we were, asked to make a mural about sandwiches, and it's like, no, he was just like, I've got this wall, I want it to be prettier. What is your idea? And the students were like, oh, I think I'd like to do sporting here. Would that work really well for the area? And he was like, yeah, sure, that's okay. And there's sometimes there was like pushback of like, oh, you want to do like, I'm not really into soccer. Can't feel like basketball or something. And like there would be, I don't want to have to see that every day. But like it was a big difference to me from the like, there's this very visible panel here that we want to use as signage. Can we make the signage prettier? And I totally get Spencer's point, and which is interesting because it's like, hey, RDA did do that sort of stuff. But we're not the RDA. And an RDA is like a very different purpose in some sense. It's like the whole point of it is to like target and redevelop. Like they are all about taking money and kind of applying it towards building developers in order to come in and like to redevelop an area. And that's really not what our government does normally. And maybe it's something that we're allowed to do, but it's just, it feels so different for me from the kinds of stuff that even Kim's class was doing with respect to murals for businesses. So that's that. I wanted to add that perspective. And then I've got, maybe it's related, it's a question I have. I'm now also confused. The second mural, I'm looking at Google Maps, I'm looking at what's there now, or not necessarily there, but what was there like maybe a year ago. And I'm looking at a photo that was taken, which I presume is what's there now. It was attached in the thing. It's got perspective. You didn't like carefully Photoshop in a design here. And the photo and the Google Maps one from a year ago, that's a mural. It looks cool. The one that's there now is different. It's clearly different than that one. So they must have in the last year or two redone that entirely. And that's a mural. It looks cool. I'm really curious, like there's another mural that's going to go in there. What's that one? Do they just keep swapping out the mural? Is this like a thing they do every year? So is it we're paying for something that's only going to last a year? Like most of the murals that I think of in Isla Vista are things that we put into place, a decade ago, 20 years ago. And like occasionally they get replaced, but they're not something that's like part of a marketing refresh that we do. And so whatever happened between 2 years ago to what's there now to what's going to happen next is just going to be there for another year. Like I'm just not really into whatever this project is. It just feels more like the food co-op driving, well, we want to repaint our building. We have a design for we want to repaint. We worked with somebody who's good at doing that kind of painting in order to isolate that design. The idea, I did catch that it wasn't, we're not paying for the totes, but if it is the same art that's on these totes and on these t-shirts, it just feels like a cohesive marketing dollars sort of thing. And it just feels so different from what we were doing with the art department, working with the various buildings in IV, where it was like, here's something pretty a student wants to do, give me a blank wall. If only I had a blank wall, I will make it prettier. So.
Dr. Brandt.
Well, I'll leave my compromise on the table because I think it's a good one, and I'd implore my colleagues to consider it. And I think it would be unfortunate for us to be set the precedent out of what I would perceive would be perceived as some territorialness that we don't want to support our local business community. And I think that at least for me, I didn't get into this to be a design review board, and that's not something I want to see our board do. We have a proposal that's been brought to us that I think it would increase the aesthetic and artistic value of the community. And I think that we should consider it. And I think it'd be hard for me to support a change in our policy after we've already passed it to preclude them from participating. I think that would set a bad precedent. So that's just where I'm at. Just wanted to share that.
Dr. Dashler.
I appreciate Director Brandt that you brought up the issue. You brought up what RDAs did and how RDAs may have been responsible for a lot of improved signage, because that was a function of RDA, is to make the community look better, right? And so improving public signage is a very valid thing for a governmental entity to do. I don't know if that's public art, but it is definitely a benefit. So, maybe it's something to consider going forward if the IVCSD does want to get into the business of beautifying the community with, public signage or private signage, helping with that. I can see there's a value to that. I do think that that the policy committee should consider looking at whether there's a requirement that a community group needs to apply for public art funds as opposed to a more of a private business. But I do think that I don't think it's fair to pull the rug out from under IV Food Co-op. They seem to have followed the rules that we set up. I think our rules, we might need to look at our policy, but I can't remember what your compromise was. I guess what I would say is that I think that we should go back to them and make sure that our half of the funding does not include IV Food Co-op signage. I think if that was I don't know if that was your compromise.
Just that it wouldn't just be the words IV Food Co-op, that there would be artistic value. And it sounds like, although I haven't seen the pictures, it sounds like there are other artistic elements in there, like vegetables and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back and talk with them about this discussion and ask them if maybe one of the murals cannot have their name on it and we fund that one and not the other. So we can take it back to them and work out something. I don't think it's hard and fast, has to be exactly this. So it's good to hear where you guys are at, and it's our first time. It's always, first time's hard, and we'll work it out with them. So I think we can.
Sounds good.
And just as a counter to what Spencer had to say, to me, it seems like if you end up with a picture that's a piece of art, that, that's kind of a standalone thing. And if over here, there's the sign on the door that says Isla Vista Co-op, I think it's when the name is actually incorporated into the graphic artwork that to me, that's where it crosses the line.
Okay. Yeah, no.
So I wouldn't necessarily say make it be artistic, and part of it, I would say keep it separate from the art so that anybody could take a picture of it and it would be a standalone piece of art, or, they could look at it that way and not as something that was integrated with the advertisement.
I agree.
Okay. Sounds good.
Dr. Freeman.
If we go back and talk to them, please also ask my question about the longevity of the second location. And what's
that's a
going on
good
with
point.
that. And in the future, I do think that, to me, the core part of it was that we were supposed to get the sketch, And so like, I just don't really even think that this, like, if this were, I'm just picturing like this were LAFCO, it was for Craig Geyer, and he's up there, and the very first question he asks is, did they pay the fees? And if the answer is no, then why are we talking about this? And it's like, they didn't actually satisfy, from my perspective, even what we had in the policy. And like, I feel really awkward discussing it, because we spend a bunch of time here trying to decide what it is that we like or dislike about the words and like the imagery and what it's going to be. And we're just all making up what the sign is going to look like. So.
Dr. Britt.
Just a question for staff. Does our policy say that we review the design?
It says that they have to tell us what it's going to be, but not that we approve exactly the design. I don't
It
think
said
it's.
photographs, sketches.
Yeah, it says they
So
they
while,
show us
while
what
your
it is.
while your point is taken, I do not feel appropriate to be reviewing the design, and already feel a little bit overstepping to be able to throw the compromise out there. So, yeah.
To me, there's like, if it says that we're supposed to be able to see what it is, the purpose of that maybe is not to review the design, but it is certainly that we should at least know that they have a design. And it's just not clear to me that there is such a thing, because we have not seen it. Like, and so
Do you need us to
if you
adjust
didn't
the
want the
blinds?
design, yeah. I will though also say that.
Jonathan's in the hot seat,
Yeah.
literally, figuratively.
It is.
That's really bright. Thank you.
Oh, good.
That's a forward.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. That's much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
No, we
And
can
I
make
would just
sure.
like to disagree that I do think we should see the design, because, you know, this is our community and we have a certain brand that we're trying to establish. And, you know, the design could be very violent and dark or awful. And, you know, that's aren't necessarily things that we want to support with our money.
Parks District sponsors tons of murals. They look at designs.
Dr. Britt.
I agree, we should look at it. It's in our policy. I just want to say, our policy doesn't say that we approve the design, and I think it would be unfortunate to pull the rug out and under from a local business that's applied under those auspices.
Yeah, but my complaint was that the policy says that we do get a design.
I hear you.
Interesting conversation.
What fun we're having tonight.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so if I can just jump in here for a brief second, I want to make sure that the board is clear in understanding really what their role is in approving a public art project such as this one, if that's the direction that the board wanted to go. So what we're dealing with really in terms of like legal issues is really the First Amendment. And so there can be restrictions on like the time, place, and manner of public speech. However, and this is in the policy as well, the board cannot get into conditioning a specific content, viewpoint, or message that the board wants to sanction. So the public art policy and the criteria that are used to evaluate the proposed public art are more general. You know, they say things like they're suitable for public viewing. It's a fixed and permanent asset to the property. With regard to characteristics, it is free of characteristics that would pose a threat to the health and safety of the public. It serves a public purpose in that it contributes to a sense of civic pride and involves the local community. And it includes aspects of Isla Vista's history, art, or culture, and it advances the broad objectives of the board. So these are the criteria that the board should be focusing on, not necessarily with respect to are we sanctioning a specific message, because then we do run into a little bit of trouble in regulating speech. And so I just want to make that point clear because it does run potentially into a First Amendment issue. However, we are sanctioning public art, and so it should be something that is enjoyable for the broad public, not just, you know, a limited sector. So that's just something to keep in mind when considering these kinds of projects.
So if they say Isla Vista Food Co-op, that's considered free speech?
It would be, yes.
I think it violates actually some of the things you just listed.
Hi.
We're arguing with our legal counsel.
No, we're not, I'm
No,
not
no,
arguing,
no,
I'm just
actually-
asking a question.
No,
You
we're
weren't
not.
on, you didn't hear,
Yeah,
I'm
you didn't
asking her
hear.
a question.
Well,
Okay.
that's, I don't think what I just said also was argument with that, because I don't think that
I'm just
she
asking
was
a
saying that-
clarifying
that the thing
question.
that we're looking at
I think we're allowed to
satisfied
do
all of
that.
those things. She was simply clarifying that we should not be saying that we're going to be like reviewing content, and we have to follow those things, and I'm following those things now.
Are those things in our policy?
Apparently those are in
That's what our
policy.
policy
Yeah, it's a
says.
good list. Nice job, policymakers.
I just want to be
So
clear,
we'll-
it's not, so like the classic example and the easiest way that I can explain like content regulated speech is like the separation between church and state, you know, like IVCSD couldn't sanction a mural that was like dedicated to a patron saint or something that was specifically religious. And so we just want to be clear that we are focusing on public benefit. And really, that's my point in bringing this up, is that it shouldn't be so focused on like the specific content or rewriting what words should or should not be in there, as long as they generally fit within the board's broad objectives, the board's goals as a district. If the board feels that this specific mural with regard to IV Food Co-op doesn't fit within the board's objectives, then that's totally fine. You can make that finding and it's no harm, no foul. The board, like I said, it's at the board's discretion, how much money, what parts of the public art they'd like to fund. Again, it all just needs to focus on general public enjoyment, like some of the directors have brought up, rather than specific content regulations.
Thank you for that clarification, council. Is there any other board comment questions from this point?
I just would like to know where on the website the policy is,
The policy,
the
like,
art policy.
I think we have a public art page on the website that we're making, Cindy, right?
Making, yes.
So,
Oh, okay, so I was
Right
looking
now,
for it, I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know.
No, it's not, but I don't, yeah.
yeah, there'll
we
be
were-
a page where you know, can apply for the program, and, I mean, we have an application already. We've shared it with the groups we already knew were interested, and that's why we did get one application, but we have to make a whole explainer on our website.
Got it.
I want to comment that albeit this is an uncomfortable conversation somehow. The spirit of it is not to produce discomfort, and I think that that's what our council is trying to like remind us of, is that like we shouldn't get into the weeds of like potentials when this potential is so happy and fruitful, no pun intended. And also that one of the bullet points mentioned was that things that have historical value for the community. And I definitely can affirm as an individual that the food co-op does have historical value and community value through just being here. One of the few businesses that has survived decades and decades here in Isla Vista. And so we should support that mission. That's something I can say confidently as an individual director. I do want to support a mural, especially in this initial round. I don't want to, the first attempt, we shut it down when we have a an applicant and we don't even have our website fully out there yet. And so it would be a new flavor for us to shoot something down on the first attempt. But I think it is something that we do want to see a little bit more specificity on, seeing the design so we can all get excited about it. And that we can, I think there's a few minor adjustments that we can make and we can still support this. It seems like that's what some of my other directors feel, or most of my other directors feel. I wish Director Craig was here, since she was in policy committee with us. I'm sure she would have some amazing comments to share.
I'll make a motion. I'll move to support the, to fund the IV Food Co-op mural with the public funds for a portion that does not include signage.
I'll second that with the question of does that mean that you're attaching the dollar amount of, was it 30?
34.
The staff recommended dollar amount?
3,400.
Yes, okay, I will second that.
Okay, we have could one of you repeat the motion, or could you repeat that motion?
Yeah. It's a motion to approve the funding request with not including signage.
Got you. Okay, the motion by Deschler and the second by Director Brandt. Yes, do you have a comment on that motion?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, I'll be voting no on this because the other mural that we're from when we're talking about, and whether or not we're modifying the first mural or the other mural, I still don't understand what its longevity is going to be. And we specifically had in the policy that apparently, thankfully, this is going to feel like a permanent part of the structure. This is going to be like, this is something that's providing like some kind of historical value, but something that's going to be just like tossed away in a year. I don't really feel like it satisfies what I was hearing from this policy, and I don't really understand.
Amend my amendment.
I mean, we
Amend my
can
motion.
bring this back and figure these issues
Yeah.
out too.
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
not
make
even,
this
I'm
motion
also, I am opposed to the idea of approving something and there's not a completed application. Maybe I'm putting my Craig Geyer hat on, but I've come to really appreciate Craig over the years. And when we had like an hour-long conversation about something going on in Santa Maria, and at the beginning of it, I was one of the people who was like, yeah, we should have this discussion. And at the end of it, I was like, Craig was right. I'm sorry, Craig. We should not be discussing an incomplete application. So, yeah.
Director Brandt.
I move we table this item until the application is complete.
Yes, I definitely support tabling this item.
Second that. Third.
Okay, well, if there's not any other board comment on tabling this item, we can move on to item 4.6, the committee reorganization.
So we have to vote.
Do we have to vote for the table?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, item 4.6, committee reorganization. So I wanted to bring this forward because since we had Director Scholes join the board, she has not had the opportunity to find a committee to participate in. We had that whole conversation before she had joined, and she expressed some interest to me about wanting to get more involved. And I know that some of our committees are more dormant right now, and some of them are getting more active. And so I wanted to see if there's any directors who possibly are looking to free themselves of their committee duties and have an excellent new director come in and share that responsibility. I believe that earlier in the library ad hoc, so I know recently, Director Brandt, you had to recuse from that conversation. I wasn't sure if you were like thinking that in the future you might have to be recused from different library conversations.
Yeah, I recuse myself because of the direction the conversation was going to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, which the library committee had not done up to that point. In future items that went for the Board of Supervisors, I don't know if there are going to be any. I would also have to recuse myself.
Got you.
And just to note, Olivia sent me a message saying that her most useful places are policy at Compost Collective, but she's happy to be in any and all.
Got you.
Yeah, she's got a lot of work. She's on a lot of
Yeah, I do
committees.
remember in that original conversation, she had accepted a lot of kind of volunteers from other directors.
Volunteers.
Is there a
Director
particular committee that you're interested in? Yeah.
I mentioned library and policy, but I'm not particularly picky. I think I could be useful in any particular place.
Director Brandt.
I'd be happy to give up my spot on the library committee and encourage Director Scholes to join.
All right, well, we can make that change. I support that change personally. I appreciate Director Brandt, you sharing some of that responsibility with our new director. I'm looking at also the other, so Director Craig had mentioned that she feels her largest impacts are policy and compost collective. And so then perhaps she's comfortable with shuffling off of the finance committee or off of the spring fest. Well, I guess we don't
Those
have,
are old.
that's old, okay, yeah.
We
Off
have
of
an
the
opening on parking.
parking has to stay at two.
Oh, right, I
Yeah,
remember,
so
I remember
because,
why, I remember why.
Yes, we have one director who's on the other side of the committee.
And did you all notice that I didn't go to the meeting?
I noticed immediately.
Oh, and that I was writing you all emails during
Yeah, I
that
noticed
time?
that.
Yeah, I didn't have it on my calendar. I was
I
like
was-
okay.
horrified.
It's okay.
So sorry. It was
Okay.
quite embarrassing.
I didn't notice the emails came in during the meeting.
Director Brand.
Just two comments. My advice, I think, for this year's finance ad hoc committee is since we're continuing to work on the budget, that we should keep it the same, at least until the budget process is over, to avoid Brown Act weirdness. With the parking committee, I know the last time we talked about this, I said I was interested in joining, but I would be willing to forego that with the caveat or question for staff that if a director wanted to meet with the parking consultants, is that something that can be arranged?
For sure.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's something that we should all remember, is that even if we're not on a committee, if we have questions about it, we go to staff and they can help explain stuff to us.
Do we think that the Spring Festival Committee will be resurrected? Because it says old committee, but what does that
Well,
mean?
we're gonna be probably doing like a committee to IV Safe to plan for that.
That's
And
right.
so I assume our two directors on IV Safe will be the ones who join that. But it might not be a board committee anymore at that point, but like an IV Safe thing that includes many other agencies, because our committee was just us planning our event. Whereas what we might need next is a coordination group and
And I know that we haven't had a meeting recently, I believe, of the legislative committee, but
I don't think it's.
We've never met. Oh,
never met. So
okay,
the,
never met. I've never met.
Yeah, it's never met.
Okay.
and so I just want to
It's a great committee.
I just want to clarify that the mission of that committee is to discuss like bills or laws or things in legislators that could possibly affect our agency, correct? Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in that committee, I'd be happy to relieve my name from that area. It's something I think would be amazing, but we haven't met yet, and I already feel like my schedule's full.
This seems like a committee that's probably never gonna meet unless there's a huge legislative
Unless there's a
proposal. Which there could be in the future. We've had two bills that have been specifically about our district. Bill that created us, and then the bill that clarified the bill that created us. So
Would things that go through LAFCO come before the legislative committee?
I think the charter says it's like any legislative body that has any impact on IV that is within our subject matter. So it technically could be the county, the LAFCO, Goleta Water District.
So that makes me think that the legislative committee could be reflecting on some of those things that come up in IV Safe, like some of those county ordinances.
Yeah.
It technically could, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so that there's already, it sounds like there's already some overlap with the directors who are a part of IV Safe being on those working groups. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to swap my name out from that conversation, have Director Scholes in there for the legislative committee. And then the other mention was for the library ad hoc, correct? Yeah, I would support that change, Director Freeman.
Would that cause, with the specific set of people that are now on, would then now be on legislative committee, and the people who were on IV Safe, would that cause some kind of Brown Act-y issue? Because you're discussing stuff constantly with Livia for the IV Safe stuff, but then she comes back and then just talks about it with Spencer and Kirsten.
Yeah, I feel like that that committee hasn't met, is what we just learned, you know, the legislative committee, so it hasn't had a,
history, I mean, like going forward, like.
yeah, going forward, it would have to be, it seems like it would have to be more organized
Yeah,
to be Brown Act clean.
yeah, exactly.
Director Brandt?
I guess the way that I always envisioned the legislative committee was that it's state and federal legislation. Which is not something that we consider that often, but occasionally we might have to. So, but maybe it sounds like the definition.
It says
will
advocacy to any legislative body, so.
Yeah, it just, because I agree with Director Freeman that it would be just kind of like too many cooks in the kitchen to have a committee that deals with the policy of something and then a committee that deals with how are we gonna advocate for it.
Dr. Schultz?
I would absolutely be interested in the legislative committee, comma, I do not want to cause a Brown Act issue.
Yeah,
It would not be. a
we don't want you
problem.
to
It's
either.
not-
Yeah,
Period.
like, I don't want to like do that.
I was only bringing up if you were talking about IVCA specific stuff,
Yeah,
not, but if you're talking about what Spencer's talking about, then that's certainly not.
Is it
Yeah.
possible for me to not go to certain meetings for that committee if it's specifically talking about Ivy safe related?
I don't think it's
things?
ever gonna be a problem or even remotely
That
close.
was- yeah, that wasn't the
Like, nothing we need to
intention.
solve
Okay.
for, like, it's, you could do both and no one.
Here's
Mostly
like
reacting
here's
to
like a good
markets.
example of something that I could see the legislative committee working on is there's community project funding that congressional offices have allocations towards, and they put out requests for community organizations and governments to submit projects. I can see that being something that like the legislative committee would work on because it's legislation. Kirsten's like,
it's not really legislation, it's a proposal. It's a funding proposal, but yeah, I mean, it's congressional.
it's legislation.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a funding proposal in legislation.
If we wanted to take a position on some of the Hart's bill about the Brown Act and teleconferencing.
Mhm.
All right, are there any questions right now on clarifying things from current directors? All right. So in these organizational sessions, you please ask questions.
So I would actually, I would like to stay on policy because there are like outstanding policy tasks that I wanted to do. But there's two comments I make on that. First of all, is that and they haven't gotten done yet, and we're really good. Like if other people would prefer to have on that, I wouldn't mind that at all. The second comment to make though is that arguably, like, I should just try to make certain that those get completed, and then the next time we do this reorganization stuff, which will happen in like 6 months or whatever, then it was just like, would you like to take it from me? But like I'm just staring at it, it's like I'm on a lot of committees, and like I like being on committees, but like the ones that I'm on, I certainly I don't want to be on finance committees. Like, that would be
You're on 4 committees.
miserable. Am I only on 4?
He's on, oh, no, yeah, you're on board, you're on the most.
I think you need to downsize.
Yeah, and so that's why like I'm okay, but we've already gotten you on library. I really want to stay on compost. I think that the board should leave me on parking, but I also like you delete me from parking. But I actually think that like the board like should keep me on parking. But policy committee, it's like, why am I there? Like I kind of like it, and I kind of like having done it. But there's this, it's only because I've got some tasks that I want to do on it, and I could just complete those tasks and then cycle off of it, or I could just not get those tasks done, and you'd be welcome to replace me. But so.
If you go off parking, I would support Director Brandt to be on parking, so I think you have a lot of that.
While I agree that I would, and I appreciate you saying that, that would probably,
Oh, conflict.
I would be worried that it could come up in the way that it came up libraries and leave me hands tied and leave the committee down a person.
Yeah, that's,
I don't think that there's an inherent one, but
yeah.
just wanted to be cautious.
Well,
Dr. Schultz?
I'm also perfectly happy switching on to add the library and legislative committees now, and I mean, honestly, 2024 is not that far away. Like,
Yeah.
it's like 6 months at this point, so I'm perfectly happy to wait till the next reorganization. Like, that sounds great. I'm pretty easy to.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say we should make those changes. one thing I really am looking forward to having your input when it comes to the library ad hoc specifically is the perspective of a current, well, I think the swap was, Jay, were you interested in leaving the library? ad hoc?
Sorry.
No, it was, I'm not interested in leaving it. Like, that's why I said we've already gone you on library. I'd be like, if you wanted, if Spencer really wanted to stay on though, I would see
It
it.
was just a type.
Yeah, I know. The one that I really want to be on is compost. Like, I actively want to be on compost. So.
Very handy. James is like, why did I accept this job?
Well, so.
You're like, holy hell, is every meeting like this? He's texting his friends.
Usually we try to stay on.
What I was going to complete saying is I really want Director Scholes and Library Ad Hoc because she has the perspective of being a current student, much more recent than myself, and that's very important for some of the direction and the future goals we're trying to formulate. I personally want to see myself stay on the Library Ad Hoc Committee given my professional experience, so that's why I'm not jumping to throw my seat to share. Yeah, okay, that looks like a sufficient amount of changes for today. And yeah, 2024 is not very far away. Dr. Schultz.
Can you comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate us taking the 15 minutes to do this.
We appreciate you surfing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You kept time?
I made a guesstimate. I was not keeping time. I just assumed. I didn't think it was like
You don't have a timer
more
going
than
in your head
15, but I
24/7.
didn't think it was like 5.
No, I was gonna say very impressed with that.
Okay, well, thank you, directors, for joining in that conversation with me. Committee reorganization is something I always sweat bullets over. It feels odd to have power in that one position. Now I'd like to move on to area 5, reports. Item 5.1, reports from members of the board. Do any members of the board have reports they'd like to share? Director Freeman.
The next meeting of the Santa Barbara County local chapter of the California Special Districts Association will be on July 24th. Unless something drastic changes the next few days, it will be located at the Residence Inn Marriott on Hollister, which is like right over there. And it will have Greg Hart as a speaker / discusser. We're looking into how to do it as like some kind of roundtable discussion sort of thing. Yeah.
Dr. Brandt.
I just wanted to share that I've had the chance to zip around the community a lot in the past week or so, both directly after UCSB graduation and move out happened, and then again yesterday. And I am just so thoroughly impressed and in admiration to all of our staff, but particularly Jenna, for managing move out in such an effective way. The community has never, ever looked this clean 1 week out of graduation. And I know we're not completely out of the weeds yet. There will probably still be some more lease ending, and there will probably be some more debris that gets left. But the fact that we are already so far ahead, and the fact that I went down Sueño, took probably like 7 or 8 pictures of huge piles of trash a week and a half ago, and then came back yesterday, and there was not a single pile of trash. I was blown away. So just thank you so much on behalf of everyone in the community for the huge impact you've been able to have.
Thank you.
We'll do.
Excellent.
Can't wait to hear about that debrief so we can all gush over this service. Do any other directors have reports they'd like to share? Okay, I'll move to item 5.2, reports from standing and ad hoc committees. So I'd like to share a short report that the Parking Steering Committee had its inaugural meeting. And one of the things coming up for community engagement in that realm is a meeting with R1/long-term residents about the conversations around parking. There's some really great information we all already heard from our consultants. Isla Vista is overparked, and there was a nice, very simple to understand graph showing street parking. I'm really excited that this project is getting off, and I can't wait till we have our standing Isla Vista committee on parking, so we can hear more directly from the public and have that conversation. And then I want to share that the library ad hoc committee had a ton of work recently, a ton of challenging conversations. We had our special meeting last week. Then we had our update that Jonathan shared with us over email, that Lita up their commitment with us after conversation. Director Freeman can provide a little bit more context about what happened at their city council meeting. But also I'll share quickly that Jonathan, Jay, and myself had a road trip up to Buellton to attend the County Library Advisory Commission. And we heard reports from tons of other libraries in the community. Then that committee got into the weeds on what they would recommend that the county supervisors do with funding for the Isla Vista library services and book ban potential. And that soon there will be a Goleta Library Advisory Commission, which I am a part of. And I'll be asking folks from this board to please come and share the needs that Isla Vista has, so that the other commissioners on that commission can hear when we start to divvy out the hours of service for Isla Vista. That way that we do have a continuation of service at a high level. Director Freeman, do you want to add anything about the library? Or maybe Director Brand, if you want to add anything that you experienced from the being library ad hoc committee?
So after our special meeting last week, I went to the Goleta City Council meeting and I sat through the whole thing. And the thing that was really interesting was that James ended up doing a pitch to the county James spearheaded the Goleta doing a pitch to the county whereby they would kick in extra money that would be sufficient in order to bring all of the service that Isla Vista was asking for to Isla Vista. But that was not guaranteed that would happen. Instead, they were then asking for an additional $25,000 from the county that would allow them to have a total of 30 hours of book ban time, 20 of which would go to Isla Vista, or maybe 20-ish, maybe even more than 20 would go to Isla Vista, and then additional 10 that would go to other unincorporated areas surrounding Goleta. And they thought that it made sense to me, the structure of that pitch, and it made sense to the Library Advisory Commission. And unless I'm totally misremembering what happened, they voted to forward that recommendation to the county board of supervisors. But the idea then was that would make that feel more tenable to the county to give them extra money, because it's like, oh, well, they're actually funding the Isla Vista portion, and the county's now funding even more unincorporated communities that right now are getting no service. The awkward thing, however, which was brought up at the Goleta City Council meeting, and also notably was noticed, or I will note, was noticed by somebody from the Santa Barbara Independent who called me about it, and I don't have commentary on this, but that the numbers kind of were made up, and that why would that actually succeed in funding 30 hours? If you total it up and you divide by the number of hours that were in the thing and you multiply back, and that was kind of admitted during the meeting, and it was kind of punted to a later date to make certain to determine that the total amount of money from both Goleta and the county would actually succeed in funding 30 hours. Somehow it happened, but so it was a little confusing on that note. But it seems like Goleta is stepping up the amount of money that they're putting in, is interested in providing us library service similar to what we had wanted, and the county's commission has forwarded to the Board of Supervisors Goleta's recommendations.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to ask? Did it come up at all about the issue of us in the future asking for the entire allotment to Glinda?
Yes.
To IVCSD?
That conversation was short and sweet. At the County Library Advisory Commission, folks were in support of that. Some of the distinction that was brought up was that currently the county does not give any unincorporated area its funds to make its own decisions with. So we would be kind of breaking new ground in that sense of being in control of these funds. But folks in the commission were understanding that we have a vision of there being an Isla Vista library of its own in the future, and that those funds in the future would support that. And so the commission was largely in support of that. That was not where the conversation stalled at all. Yeah.
And Darcel was there and really drove a lot of that. She said that was always her vision.
Yeah, there was also there was a reporter that Jay had mentioned. He talked to me as well after the meeting. He was in the physical presence of the meeting with us.
Not the same reporter I talked to.
Oh, not the same reporter.
Gene
Well,
Nakamoto or something. Gene Nakamoto.
Yamamura. Well, the
Article's up.
What?
the article is up, and it shows it's authored by Gene Yamamura and Josh Kazali, who is the reporter that I spoke with. But that is the report from that ad hoc committee. Are there any other reports from standing and ad hoc committees? All right, move to item 5.3, report from district council.
Thank you. Nothing to report tonight. I hope you all have a very safe and happy 4th of July.
Thank
You
you
too.
very much.
Thank you.
Now, 5.4, report from general manager and staff.
Yeah, we'll let Sydney go first.
Alrighty, so I know Jonathan will have a more formal update for the parking study, but just a CE update. We are in the process of coordinating focus groups for the summertime for long-term residents. We have 2 dates that we're offering: a virtual meeting on July 19th and 2 in-person meetings on August 2nd when Dixon's team will be in town. And we will have a webpage up soon with the overview of the project. And we also have a job description ready for extra community engagement support on this project. For move out, no formal update because I know you'll all be getting one at the next meeting, but I just want to echo all of the kudos for Jenna and her team and Earthcomb. We have received some incredible feedback from community members and residents, emails, phone calls, all the things. It's been so nice. So just want to echo all that. And then for Compost Collective, they collaborated with the Give Sale to recover over 2,000 food items from the landfill by collecting from houses. That was both Isla Vista Beautiful and Compost Collective. They did their the pickup from people's houses, and then there was a drop off at Embarcadero, and so they donated those to the AS Food Bank and the Food Bank as well. And the last donation is scheduled for tomorrow. Then we'll have final numbers for that. You can see all the food that's over there that they've sorted through. Carly hired a part-time operations coordinator for the Compost Collective team, which is exciting. And the IVCC team recovered 1,894 pounds of food scraps by composting them throughout the spring quarter of this year. Food scraps were sourced from our 2 food scrap drop-off sites at St. Mike's and United Methodist, and compost was donated to community gardens at these sites. That's it.
Great. Yeah, still on compost, we have our consultant that Carrie and I met with last week, and we felt pretty good about that situation. So we're gonna bring that forward to the board next meeting. And we also hired the operations coordinator support position for Carwood. So he's an excellent person with lots of experience in the compost world. So yeah, we have someone new coming on that team. The ordinance committee to look at the IV Safe ordinance is meeting this Thursday. I won't make it to that one, but our 2 directors are on there, so I feel confident they'll represent us. Like I mentioned, the interpersonal violence investigator, we hope to have someone start in mid-July. So they've opened applications. The deadline for applications is this Friday, And so we will have somebody in that position soon now that we've approved the budget. So that's a great update for us. We've been waiting a year. Just to give you an update on the acoustics project, that's moving forward for the most parts, but the county finally did respond. But they've sent a huge list of questions and requirements and, X, Y, and Z. So I'll work through it, and we have our consultant who put the project together to help us work through it. But they did finally respond, but it would have been nice to know these things like 2 months ago. But it should be fine. It should be fine. The parking study, there's not much more to say, but it's going well. We have a quarter of data now. We'll have our first public parking committee meeting next month in July, and we'll reveal that data then, and it's what people think, but we're gonna try to, one thing I'll say about the data is that it shows the tiers as under 85% or above 85%. And we're trying to make it more granular so that you can look at the 80 to 90 and then 90 to 95 and then what's over 100, because there are some streets that are over 100% because people are parking in red or driveways or things like that. So we're going to try to make the data a little easier to read for when we publish it publicly, because there's a lot of reasons for that I'll talk about at the public parking committee meeting. We're going to have a staff retreat this Thursday, so we're going to be looking at our version of the board retreat essentially. And I think our year-end work is going really well with Sibel and I and our accountant Carrie. Very smooth, and we should be wrapping up nicely on Friday for year-end. So yeah.
When does Sydney leave us?
July 8th, right?
Right, the 7th is my
7th,
last day, so
7th, yeah.
technically I go out on leave on the 10th.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have full confidence in Jimmy and the rest of our team. I have a very extensive job guide to refer to.
Send us pictures as soon as you get them.
I will, yes, hopefully, right now I'm almost ready, so anytime would be great. Yes, definitely will.
Yay. First baby.
Dr. Brandt.
Sorry, one question just for my information. Is there a significance to the 85%? Is that like a standard that's important? Because I feel like I remember that the last parking study.
Actually, yeah, that's why I'm asking to make it more granular, because the last one just used 85%. And
why that?
I don't know why. But I brought it up to our consultants and they thought it was a good idea that we break it up more.
Okay.
But I'll just say, I went back and watched the video from the last study reveal that Jay had on YouTube from 2015, and it sounded like a lot of residents were mad that it said that there's 15% or less parking availability because they felt the 15% sounded too high. Even though that's it was just the top bracketing, it said 15% or less, it could mean 5%. So people just thought the 15 sounded bad, like you're trying to spin a positive spin on a situation. So it's not actually that. It's actually mainly, we'll see. Maybe of that amount above 85%, most of it's probably 95% plus or something like that. So that's why I'm asking to make it more granular so that we can see exactly what the occupancy is, not just 15% or less.
That sounds very helpful. I think it would also be helpful for us to hear from the parking consultants if there's any legal significance to that.
I don't think it's a legal significance. It's just it seems like it's a standard-ish number because they did it, and then the study from 10 years ago and 20 years ago did it, but I asked them to change it and they said yes. So it's good.
I was going to ask you, what ordinance committee? Is that the county ordinance committee?
No, it's not it's just like the committee that Lieutenant Tesla put together.
Okay.
From IVC.
I was like, we have a new committee.
No, not ours.
Okay.
Not our committee.
Okay.
I just named it. That's not
got
the
it.
name. But yeah.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you for that report. I think we heard one ask from the public about a future meeting, a future agenda item. And do any other directors have future agenda items they'd like to bring forward?
What was that item?
I don't remember exactly. Could you remind us what your public comment was at the beginning?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it was about, when you put out on social media, on Instagram, for example, the next meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's not an item.
Just
Just
the
an update, okay.
It says meetings. Okay.
Totally fair.
Yes.
Super fair. I think I would just write like join us for tonight's meeting, so that's why.
Well, remember, I'm retired now, so I have what I call retirement dementia. I don't know what day of the week it is. I can tell you dates, I can tell you times, but not the day of the week.
I got you
So-
covered. Yep.
All right, thank you, everyone. Is there any future agenda items that folks want to bring forward? No, okay, see none. Director Brandt.
This is maybe, and I'll coordinate with staff on this, but there was some research the city and I participated in from a UCSB student about coastal erosion that it might be, I'm thinking might be cool for the board to get a presentation on.
Yeah,
Super interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to hear about that.
Yes, and I forwarded it to Henry because I knew he'd be interested.
I actually reached out to her to watch the video I put together. the
Oh, cool.
documentary, so.
All right, that sounds excellent. And now I'd like to move to adjourn.
Yay.
Yay.
Do we have to second or
Was
do
that a movement
anything?
or was that a?
Or do we have to do
It is
anything?
You don't have to.
full movement
Okay, go
by
ahead.
me alone.
Oh, wait, it's not a.
We're adjourned.
Okay, all right.
I need to just invest in the gavel.
We
These
got a
are
lot
so
of-
nice, by the way. I love that.
These are the ones from IVC. This is what IVC.
Actually,